I've got an extreme lifestyle right now where I work like 15 hours a day every day. And I'm cool with that. And I feel like I'm somewhat built for it. But that's all well and good until you actually have a problem in your life and you've got to actually manage your emotions throughout the course of the day. And, I felt like when I worked at Bunnings, if I was going through something.
Guys, we today have a very special guest on the Pie's Eyes podcast, and I'm not talking about the person to my left because he's obviously a frequent appearer on the Pie's Eyes podcast now. That's Caleb, if you didn't know. But to our right, we've actually got someone who we kind of look up to as a YouTube godfather in AFL world, and that's Jesse from True Footy, who does this full time and has nearly 30,000 subscribers on the True Footy channel, Jesse?
Yeah, 28 right? A bit, I think.
Yeah. So let's get him to 30 if you guys aren't subbed. He is an Eagles fan, admittedly, and he does have a True Eagle Footy channel as well that he's recently, immersed into. But, yeah, let's be kind to Jesse today. He's going to give us some great wisdom, and we're going to talk about, obviously, his full-time endeavours and his love for AFL, and we'll talk a little bit about his love for the Eagles as well. But hopefully you guys can take bits and pieces from this.
Exactly right. You got to take the good with the bad. You actually told me he was a massive Freo supporter, so this is a surprise for me. But glad to have you on. So very keen to get into today's podcast.
How are you going, Jesse? Tell us what's going on in your end of the world in Manchester.
That's right. Yeah. Good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me on this show. The progress you guys have made as a podcast and a channel has been outstanding this year. So thank you. What have I been up to? I've been traveling for the last couple of months. That's kind of part of the reason I moved from Australia to England, was the opportunity to travel. And around that time was the time I decided to launch True Footy as my full-time gig. And then depending on how successful it was, whether I'd need a job after that, I wasn't sure. And we've managed about a year full-time now, maybe a little bit more than a year. So it's going well, but definitely after a bit of travel, trying to get my head back in the game and reconnect with football and reconnect with my own ambition. It's a little bit tricky, but that is very much a first world problem.
Yeah. And I actually want to touch on that just quickly. How are you dealing with, I guess, running an AFL based channel while living abroad and trying to sustain that on a full-time basis as well?
So as for the being away thing, it's actually been so easy. Like, you wouldn't have been able to do this 10 years ago, and you might not have even been able to do this 5 years ago, like in terms of being able to keep up with footy away. But, the only difference to my actual routine is that I get up earlier, and, I'll get up at 4 a.m. to watch the Eagles, or, sometimes, particularly finals, I'll get up at 4 to watch finals. But, when I factor in it's my job, I used to get up at 4 a.m. for work anyway. So, that part has been pretty easy. I've still been able to collab. You've been on my channel before, Anthony, and it's still very, very doable. So in fact, if anything, I have to say that the time difference makes it easier, because then all the football happens at the start of the day, and then through the rest of my working day, I can spend that time till about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock making videos. And then it's actually been really handy. As for the full-time aspect, look, I won't lie. It's fun, but the hourly rate's not great. So you make that sacrifice when you decide to do something that you're passionate about. There's been a few dicey months financially, and getting through December and January was tricky. And then also trying to balance that with travel. There's obviously no annual leave in this game. Like, you've just you get paid for what you do. So around that is a bit of financial stress, but I think I've been able to harness that to motivate me as much as anything. So overall, it's been a fun experience.
Awesome. It's interesting how it kind of works to your advantage, in a sense that you can get all your workout done during the day, and not have to be, I guess, interrupted by the broadcasting schedule of the AFL games. And, naturally, I guess, as a footy lover, sometimes, you're an Eagles fan, but you see a nice Saturday night game or Friday night game or whatever the time may be, and then that naturally would probably eat into the time that you had initially devoted to do some, I guess, content creation, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And especially with daylight savings, that throws it out a little bit. But I mean, most of these games, if it's a Saturday night game, that's 10:30 a.m. sometimes. So I need to get back into the live streaming the games, but then that becomes like a really good time to just make content. I live stream myself watching the game. So that's not too bad. Thankfully, it could be worse. Like I spent a month in America visiting my sister recently, and it's 12 hours removed from Perth. So yeah, some of the games were literally on at like 3 a.m. and or earlier than that. Like it was unmanageable. So thankfully, I'm just right in the right sweet spot.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask you, like, do you find it sometimes challenging having to like rewatch a game? Like for me, like I had coaching, I coach under 15s, and on Sunday, you know, we had that cracker of a game against North Melbourne, and then I had to rewatch the game. And I don't mind rewatching games, but a lot of the appeal for me watching footy is like the unknown aspect of the game, of like you don't know what the end result is. And you know, I kind of knew that we made an amazing comeback. So do you find that challenging at all?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I probably actually feel that a little bit more of a challenge on my Eagles fan channel because the nature of the content is slightly different for a fan channel. You know, I think it's good to let a little bit of emotion come into it, and you want to speak for the fans and be a bit of a mouthpiece to some extent, whilst also offering your own opinion. But if you didn't watch the game live, and this is a great time to do this question because the last 3 Eagles games I've been at the airport. You know, twice for flights delayed, which was, annoying, but I otherwise would have seen the games. But yeah, then I had to go watch the game back. So for instance, when we lost to North, Elliot Yeo's holding the ball decision at the end, because I already knew about it before I watched the game, I didn't really fire up in the review about it. You can have your own opinion about whether that's a good thing or not. But sometimes, you know, I don't want to have a review that's a little bit flat and just kind of ignoring the emotion of it when the audience and the fans are all pissed off about what just happened. So I think certain occasions, like in particular watching the Eagles and expressing my views on them, that me watching it back later has negatives as much as it does positives.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like I said, Caleb mentioned it's the live aspect that you love because it's the unknown and you ride the waves with the fans live, whereas in retrospect, it's a bit different. So that's obviously a challenge. But Jesse, I just want to wind it back a little bit and ask you, what initially inspired you to, I guess, present yourself or put yourself in a position where you were posting AFL content? And I'm talking about early days.
Yep. So the year was 2017, and you know, I'm 30, so I'm a little bit older than the typical YouTube generation. And I remember my mate sent me a podcast of True Geordie, and I didn't fully understand what it meant to be a YouTuber. Like broadly, I did, but I didn't really understand that you could make a full-time living off it, but also make like really well-produced, high-quality content. Like the standard of content on the platform was something I was like shocked by a little bit. And then that sort of led to a conversation months later where my friend said to me, what if we tried to do something like this? What would that look like? What would the topic be? And it was always going to be football. I think we started off thinking it would just be a general podcast that would gravitate towards footy. And then I think once you're in the swing of making content and understanding how important it is to have a niche, it became obvious that we just needed to talk about football, which was our number one thing. So we started off doing a podcast exclusively with no other form of content. It was bang average, but we got banged out about 6 episodes before I think we even got a comment, which is not too bad, I suppose. But then I sort of moved towards like highlight videos. You know, you see on like TikTok now, you get like TikTok edits and it will just be music and editing, and the standard of that is so high. But 7 years ago, you could just upload like a song and have highlights over the top and people would appreciate it. Like it was just different then. So I did that to try and build subscribers and an audience to get them to stay for the podcast. And then over time, I just started, you know, doing little fun projects like I did a 10-minute video analyzing the Eagles and Fremantle's youth and comparing them. And that was relatively successful. And then it's kind of just blossomed from there. I realized they would come for the shorter analytical content that was creative, and then hopefully they would stay for the podcast. And 7 years later, it's kind of evolved to what it is now.
Brilliant. And in the meanwhile, during that process, because obviously you probably wouldn't have initially foreseen like a long-term prospect. And what were you, I guess, chasing in the real world? What was your pursuit with work, studies, whatever that may be?
Yeah, so I studied law and commerce, and I think I must have been in about my 4th year because I did it part-time. I was working at Bunnings. So I was going part-time Bunnings, part-time uni, and then somewhere along the line discovered YouTube as well. And so I guess my pursuit at the time was literally just finish my degree. Like, it was just make enough to, I think I had a girlfriend at the time, so it was make enough to go on holiday, build up the channel. I really wanted to get the channel monetized. And then I also just wanted to finish my degree. Somewhere along the line, I graduated mid-2019, and I also got promoted at Bunnings, and I loved it there. It was 2 minutes from my house. It was a really good setup. And instead of pursue my degree, which I finished, I decided to stay at Bunnings full-time and do YouTube full-time. Well, not full-time, sorry, around the side. And I was able to still grow the channel. I don't know if I would have been able to do that had I, gotten like an entry-level job as a lawyer or in marketing. That was my other degree. So that was quite a big moment. The decision to not pursue my law degree straight away allowed me to still grow the channel on the side. And it's probably a bit of a sliding doors moment. I might not still be doing content if I didn't make that decision.
Unreal.
Yeah, there's a lot of like sacrifice you got to go into it, and then like you've just done a massive uni course, and there's a lot of potential upside of being a lawyer. A lot smarter than me.
Yeah,
and
what's with all these lawyers?
You know what I mean? I like a lot of, obviously we must be breaking the mold here a little bit, but like, was it that early on where you go, okay, I'm going to endeavor to just back myself in and, work full-time at Bunnings and see how far this YouTube channel could take you? Was that kind of the deciding moment, or was it a little bit later on where you're like, oh, wait, no, I'm, getting some big wins here, I can probably do this full-time? Like, when was that kind of deciding factor?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that prior to me graduating, I had a bit of success, and I actually think it might have been the first half of 2019. For whatever reason, the AFL YouTube ecosystem popped. Like Caden McDonald, I'm not sure exactly, but it felt like that was his explosive moment. Him and Young King Cookson were making a podcast, and you had, even like there's the pair, there's Druzy, all of us sort of were doing well at the same time. There was a bit of a community. And as such, we all fed off it and succeeded. And that 6 months was probably where I went from feeling like nobody watched me to feeling like some people watched me, I suppose. So that period of success was probably critical in me deciding to keep going with YouTube, because I think if I didn't think it had any potential, I wouldn't have made the decision to not pursue my degree. As for how ambitious I was about it back then, I think it was one of those things where, like, outwardly to my friends and family, I'd be like, oh, this is just a bit of a fun side hustle, make some money. But I think deep down, there was a part of me that was like, I want to push this as far as it can go. A bit of a, not an ego thing, but I think there was just something underneath that wanted me to, I'm a bit of an extremist. I like to push things all the way when I'm really into them. So I think deep down that desire has always been there. It's absolutely wavered over time. And I'll be honest with you, the decision to go full-time last year when I moved to England wasn't so much an ambitious one. I think it was kind of, I want to do something around my travel to make money and therefore not worry about getting time off, knowing that it probably wasn't going to make enough money to pay for the travel, which it didn't. But then I think, after a period of success towards the back end of last year, then I was able to make the decision not to get a job here. Then it's kind of reignited me to, again, take this really, really seriously.
Interesting. And just on that, regarding the, what was the point you made there? Give me 1 second, Jesse.
You're good.
Just one thing. Is there anything there that you wanted to touch on from that? It's a lot of good.
Yeah, no.
Give me 1 second, Jesse. There was something in there. There was something in there.
That's all good. I don't even remember what I said.
I intentionally got a notepad down so I can write down things that you're saying, so I can reflect upon as you're finished talking.
I'm also looking at what he's writing, and there is a big reason why he doesn't know what to ask you, because I can't even tell what the fuck he just wrote down.
Hey, actually, Jesse, what is the deal with these lawyers and YouTubers? Like, obviously, you're an aspiring lawyer. I'm pretty sure Terry from Blue Abroad was a working lawyer as well. So what's the deal there?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? I think there could be a correlation there. I think I was told before I went to law school that one of the biggest things they look for is actually like language command and the ability to express yourself. Like there's a big overlap there. And I was advised to actually study English literature in high school to be able to make a case for getting in. Like they said that was actually something that would help you. So I think it's that.
Very interesting. I actually kind of somewhat remember now. So one thing on that with the lawyer bit, it's actually, I see that because when I watch you and I watch Terry, you guys aren't rushed to the point and you're comfortable with pauses, especially Terry. Like you'll be watching a video and he'll be saying nothing for like 3-4 seconds and you're like, okay, yep. And you're like, he's not saying anything, but you're still engaged because there's a bit of like, there's so much substance behind what he's saying, even if he's saying like a word every 3-4 seconds. Have you noticed that with someone like Terry?
100%. I think Terry's on his own level because I watch, excuse me, when I watch Terry, like I'll generally click on after a, either a good Carlton win or a bad Carlton loss. Those are the most entertaining ones. But he's a very like emotive speaker. He seems like an emotional guy, and I think he and I share that. I think we're kind of kindred spirits, very similar stories, me and Terry. But I also just noticed that he doesn't really have many cuts in his videos, and like when I'm on a roller, I won't have too many, but I think consistently there's been videos where I feel like I didn't see one edit the entire time Terry spoke after a Carlton game. And like he's on his own level there.
Yeah, that's a crazy correlation between the lawyer and obviously needing to practice English and linguistics leading into it. But the other question I had from your brilliant answer before was how you mentioned a bit of ego. And I think ego gets a bad rap these days. I think inherently it's there. It's natural. And if you don't reach out to it in any, I guess, endeavor in life, whether it be footy, whether it be YouTube, I think you're damned, you're screwed without it. Like, how is your relationship with ego? Do you look at it in a positive way? Do you feel like times it affects you, or how does that feel for you?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think everyone has an ego. It's probably just the way the language we use to describe it can be inconsistent. When you say someone has an ego, it implies that they're arrogant. I suppose for me, I think of it as like we all have egos. It's just the extent to which you can control it or not let it control your decision making and stuff like that. I don't think I'm motivated too much by ego, to be honest. Like I don't. I think we live in a world, and I know you're fairly early in this, Anthony, so I don't know how much like negative press you get. You probably don't. You're doing really well. You guys are doing really well on the channel in general. And I feel like I didn't get that much early on, but over time, my point being is I get humbled on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Like you're only as good as your last video in this game. Yeah. And I can make a piece of content that I'm so happy with. And the next day, because I upload daily, I could upload a tier maker that everyone hates and thinks I'm a loser for. So it's just, I'm constantly kept in the middle, to some extent. So as for ego being important though, like, I don't know if this ties in exactly with what you're asking me, but I remember young King Cookson, actually, Caden's friend, who I think is coming back to YouTube, which is exciting. But he said something about once on a podcast, he's like, everyone who does this, to some extent, there's a party that likes how you look on camera. There's a part of you that likes being in the spotlight to some extent. And that's got to be true. Like, I don't feel that way, but I think to some extent we are motivated by that a little bit. And it's probably something we should harness because it's something that will ultimately make you better at what you do if you just accept that.
Yeah. There's a couple of good points there. Like the one biggest thing from us starting, quite recently is, for me, when I talk about people regarding the channel is, talking to my best mate, we get to talk about footy, which is what we love. And if 1,000 people which are happening to listen to us, like I take that as a positive. Like I'm just amazed that the people are willing to listen to us, and I just get to talk to my best mate on camera and they respect that opinion. In regards to ego, I think there's like, it does get a bit of a bad rap, but I think you've just got to have a willingness to drive yourself and where you want to see yourself. Like for me, ego might, like you say, not affecting your decisions where I'm not going to listen to Anthony or I'm not going to listen to my coach out on the footy field, but it's the ego for myself is like, okay, hey, you got me in that drill. I'm going to try to get you back. Yeah. Or like, the ego to want more out of what we're doing on YouTube and to continue to grow. is it does drive you, but as long as it's not driving you with haste, I think that's where the line is, where it's kind of confidence and ego, and it's not leading you into rash decisions.
Yeah.
Well said. I think it's kind of a necessary thing. I'm very taken by or interested in the concept of like what are the traits of successful people, and there's no like single formula, but I think there's a common driver in a lot of them. It's the, to some extent, dissatisfaction with where they are and the belief that they can get better. You know what I mean? So that just ties into being competitive. Like you said, you use the drill example. Oh, you just got me, I'm going to get you back. Like that there is a part of ego in that, like you say. So I think, as long as you can harness the positive sides of it and not let your ego get in the way of things, and make irrational decisions because of ego, or, start to think that maybe that you're better than you are. Those are probably the two pitfalls.
It's such a blurred line. And even growing up playing soccer, I struggled with that blurred line. If I played well, the next moment I'm on top of the world, and then I go to training to my goalkeeper coach Boyo, an old school Yugoslavian Serbian goalkeeper coach. Mate, I could have the best game as a goalkeeper in a game, and then that next training session, he could make me feel like the scum of the earth. And then it tinkered with my emotions on a daily basis, so much so that it has me, I guess, questioning that line of, is it ego? Is it confidence? What is it? But I guess that's it's probably a philosophical lesson that we're, I guess, learning to comprehend on a daily basis. You look at us being fucking stoic and philosophical.
It's true though. It just echoes life, right? Like the amount of times we think we're on top of the world, then we get humbled in a brutal way, across any aspect of life. YouTube and content creation is the same. I cycle as a human. I cycle through that feeling like I have value. There are days where I feel like my content isn't valuable, and then some days I'm just in the middle, and we just have to accept that sometimes like these cycles are very natural, and what goes around comes around.
Yeah. Hey, Jesse, regarding you being exposed, or not exposed, but people, I guess, feeling some sort of conflict towards some of the content you release, I guess that comes with being a general AFL YouTuber, whereas Caleb, and obviously you've started your True Eagle channel, which you probably feel more well-versed in and comfortable speaking to at length on a whim. And to be able to talk about AFL and I guess at an extended level to the frequency that you're doing, there's going to be blemishes, isn't there? Like, and I could not fathom trying to do or run a general AFL YouTube channel for 18 different teams, where we get things wrong watching our favorite side, talking on streams, videos. It's how does that, I guess, how do you navigate through that? Because that's something obviously you have to face on a daily basis.
100%. And you couple that with having to produce such a high volume of content to be able to make enough to live. The mistakes just happen so often. That's what I say. I get humbled on a daily basis, because there's like, if you got probably 3 videos a week have some sort of error in them. It's really difficult. And I think one important thing that I need to remember is to play to my strengths a little bit and not overstretch myself, and don't deep dive a topic that I clearly don't know much about. It is really hard, and it's also a thankless job, and that's sometimes a little bit difficult, like sifting through feedback and deciding what to take on and what to not. I think we live in a game where even in traditional media, the media pundits, like, how many pundits can you think of that people universally like? It's almost as though we live in a game where the you succeed, the better you get. You live long enough to become the enemy. I don't know if that's an Australian culture thing or a Western culture thing. I'm not too sure, but it's like there are some guys out there who are genuinely dedicated to their craft, like Kane Corns, probably a crazy example there, but like David King, like these guys are really working hard. They're professional, and yet nobody gives them the time of day. And they're they're certainly more legitimate than someone like me. So my attitude is kind of like, well, first of all, it's hard to sit through the feedback and decide, am I wrong, or am I just being a part of this game where everyone gets shat on at some point in their career? But yeah, it's a tricky one to juggle, because it's like, if I picture what success looks like when I've made it and I'm self-actualized, is everyone just going to hate me more than they hate me now? It's a weird one.
Yeah, it's just like opinions in the end of the day, because, you know, the more eyes you get on yourself, you know, you're not going to appeal to everyone. And as long as you're comfortable with not appealing to everyone, and you're going to get some people, you know, like we've been generally pretty positive, only a couple of bad comments.
Yeah.
But like, it's generally very positive. But like, I know the more we're going to do this, the more eyes we're going to bring to it. And then you just pass and parcel of the game is, you know, people aren't always going to agree with you.
Yeah. And Jesse, I'll just add to that quickly. It is interesting because as the channel grows, you notice a few people who come in and they're quite pedantic. Like you might get a word wrong, or you might get the year wrong by 1 year or a couple months, or the round wrong. And the first thing they say is they correct the error before they, I guess, if they do, pay credit to the video, which is interesting as well, how people just, they nitpick at it. But personally, I don't take offense to it, but I guess it's just, again, like Caleb said, it's part and parcel of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some people can't help themselves. I did an Eagles quiz recently, and I recorded it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember the 1992 Norm Smith medalist was Peter Matera because I just had a mind blank. Now that you guys aren't Eagles fans, but like that's kind of blasphemous to forget that. But it's not like I didn't know. It's just that when the camera is on, it's so much harder to be perfect, you know, whether we like it or not. Like, especially when you're doing a quiz and it's a bit of a pressured situation, you're like, who the hell was a 1992 Norm Smith medalist? And my audience is going, what the hell? So yeah, sometimes just being on camera will cause you to make mistakes that you probably wouldn't have made if you weren't on camera. Even for somebody who's been doing it for 7 years, that's still a thing. But you did ask me how I sort of navigate that sort of criticism, and I kind of went on a tangent. But the one tricky thing about the time difference is, one thing I don't like is when I wake up, the first thing I see is my comments. And if they're negative, it really does hang over me for the whole day. So one trick is I try not to read my comments absolutely first thing in the morning. I think it's good for the brain not to do that. But yeah, overall as well, I think just accepting that you're only as good as your last video, you're only as bad as your last video. I just make the next video, and if it's better, then people will move on, and I have to move on. You can't get like bogged down in these moments of feeling inadequate or whatever. Like, they do still affect me 7 years on. If anything, it's a little bit harder than it was 3 years ago. But yeah, I think it's just a lesson for life. You just can't get bogged down in these moments. You got to move on pretty quick.
I thought, Jesse, once you hit the age of 30 and you see the other side, you become this impervious man to any sort of adversities, and you become a full-grown adult at that point. You telling me that's not the case?
I think I've regressed, bro.
Hey, just quickly, bro, on that whole thing regarding, I guess, checking your phone in the morning. And I think while this is specific, I think it would actually extend out to maybe some of the viewers who are listening. I talk about this dopamine dump that maybe isn't spoken a whole lot about on YouTube, and some of the challenges I'm facing. I haven't even told Caleb yet, but some of the challenges I'm facing is trying to reluct against checking my phone, checking YouTube Studio every 10 minutes, seeing if there's new comments, new views. Mate, I find myself waking up sometimes at 5 a.m., like basically asleep, but I still somehow manage to grab my phone and quickly check YouTube Studio just to see how everything's trending. So talk about the dopamine dump that you get from that, and maybe ways you try to navigate around it. Have you gotten better at it? So on and so forth.
No, I have not gotten better at it. I have no advice. Absolutely. I think I've got the YouTube Creator app, and you just refresh. And I think it doesn't help that I'm a very data and numerically driven kind of guy. And like, I've got a spreadsheet for every month of performance I've ever had on YouTube. And I like to look at like how I'm going at previous years. So I'm keen to see how many views this video got, because I'm aiming for a certain goal this month, and it just becomes this compulsive thing. And it's addictive seeing your subscribers go up by like 1, 2, 3. During some periods like of growth, back more so like in 2019, when the growth was good, it was really bad because I was literally refreshing every few minutes and it was going up. So long story short, I don't have the answer for you. It's hard for me to not look at it and still be mentally in it. You know what I mean? I guess what I'm saying there is the only times I'm not checking the app is when I'm withdrawn from YouTube, so like I'm on holiday. But when I'm in the game, it just becomes this compulsive thing. And yeah, I mean, What's the advice? I mean, I think certainly not looking at your phone. That's probably a good idea in general. Like I find that I'm the most productive, and I think this is backed up by science, but I'm most productive when I get out of bed in the morning and go get some water first and sit down before I check Instagram or my YouTube comments and stuff like that. I think that's a very obvious thing that you can do, but I'd be lying if I said I'd worked out the formula for avoiding it. Unfortunately, it's just kind of like I said, I'm an extremist, and when I'm into something, I'm really into it, whilst acknowledging it's not good for me.
What about you, Champ? Has it crept into your life since you've jumped on the show and the podcast?
Mate, look, I know as soon as we finish the stream, I'm trying to refresh because it's a bit delayed on the views, and I'm waiting to see. But it is a bit like I do like seeing the numbers go up, and it's just trying not to let it creep into. I'm always pesting to see how the videos perform. And like our last podcast, for example, was the first podcast that didn't do better than the last one. So the last 2 podcasts ago, we hit.
Well, we got 2K on the Lockie Schultz one. Yeah.
On the Lockie Schultz one. And then the next one was the mid-season review. And then it did about 950. Yeah. So that was the first one I was like, hey, man, like straight away, I'm like, this isn't performing how it was meant to in my head. And like, this is the first video that we've regressed together.
Yeah.
But, it's going to happen. And we had a chat about it. And then, it is a balancing line. And like for us, it's still fun. It's so fresh. But for you, I couldn't even imagine being in shoes where, this is your income and, like it's your livelihood, right? And that extra layer of it, like I don't blame you if you haven't worked out the formula yet. So, but when you do, let us know so we can start adding it into our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, you guys are still kind of like in that honeymoon exciting period of YouTube. And maybe that will continue. Like I'm only going to compare it to my experience, but like when things are going well, again, I'm not going to put a limit on you guys, but I just mean like I felt in 2019 when I was blowing up a little bit in relative terms that it was just going to continue forever. You know what I mean? And it didn't. I went to Europe the middle of that year and then came back and the channel just did not recover for the next 2 years. Again, not saying that's because of you, it's just because of my own performance, I suppose. But it is exciting. It is exciting. I remember those days where I'd kind of be excited to see my new video go up and just be like, how's it going to be received and how's it going to perform? What are the comments? I'm not going to lie, in the middle of what is season 8 or season 7 of doing True Footy, in the middle of June when there's buy rounds and people aren't engaged, I sometimes just cringe before I even look at my comments. I'm like, eh. And they won't even be bad. I just think, I don't know. I've got post-holiday blues, guys. I'm sorry.
You've got a sickening combination of fields of study as well in marketing and being a lawyer. So those two combined as a YouTuber, looking at the data and everything else in between, it can't be a healthier makeup for this endeavor.
No, yeah, I'm just super compulsive with it. It's hard to. I'm very progress driven. I think like everyone is as well. So I got goals of I've got a spreadsheet of what I want to achieve this year, and it's hard to be like that and then also withdraw from being able to check on that progress pretty regularly. But it's all right. I'm alive, so it's fine.
And if it gives you any solace, Jesse, there are times where I'm popping up Social Blade, which is basically the YouTube analytics where you get to compare yourself against other channels. I do that far too much. And I'm looking at True Footy. I'm looking at True Eagle. I'm like, all right, well, he was doing this in this year. I should be doing this. I'm looking at Swoop Luke. I'm looking at Blue Abroad. Like I'm looking at everything and I'm breaking it down month by month, fucking 3-4 years in the past. So I can resonate how sickening it can be when it comes to diving into the data aspect of things as well. And Caleb himself by trade works in marketing. Yeah. So it's not a good blend.
No, that's so funny, man. I can relate to that. Maybe I don't know if I was as extreme as that, but I can relate to that impulse. I wouldn't trust the future projections on Social Blade. I reckon if I looked in 2019, it was going to tell me I had 1 million subscribers within 2 years. It's nah.
Yeah. So that's a good one, actually. Like, so you've been doing it for how many years again? It's about
7.5.
Yeah. So what has there been stages of, you're feeling burnt out or, you just felt like, shit, I just need to have a break of this. Like, I know we're quite fresh, but at least there's 2 of us doing this and you're doing this by yourself. Like, is there a part of that? Like, what have you done to overcome feeling burnt out and what ways have you worked around it?
Maybe even wanting to give up, Jesse, as well, by the way.
Yeah. Honestly, Heaps. Yeah, in 7.5 years, especially when, I probably only made enough to live off in a single month as recently as October or November last year. I think October. So, I mean, when the reward hasn't been there, obviously it's a little bit harder to stay motivated. But yeah, it took me a long time to get burnt out. I reckon I got burnt out after about 4 years. Early days, it felt like a real privilege to be able to make YouTube videos. And I really valued that time I had. And particularly when it was going well, getting some level of validation, it felt really good. I find that I've got an extreme lifestyle right now where I work like 15 hours a day every day. And I'm cool with that. And I feel like I'm somewhat built for it. But that's all well and good until you actually have a problem in your life and you've got to actually manage your emotions throughout the course of the day. And, I felt like when I worked at Bunnings, if I was going through something, I could go to work and just pull apart some pallets and get through it. I think when you've got to be creative, when you've got to be on camera, if there's a chink in your armor, I find that really quite difficult. So it's all well and good for me to be able to do this high level productivity stuff and smash out content. But like in 2020, like I broke up with my girlfriend. We dated for 4 years, and like it was amazing how I went from super ambitious to I don't think I need this anymore, because I was obviously going through some other stuff. But because you've got to be self-motivated, you've got to be disciplined and do it in your own time. That was probably the first one. 2020, 2021. I had a really good year on YouTube. And then 2022, again, existential crisis. What am I doing? Go to Europe on holiday, forget about the channel for 3 months, come back, decide to move to England. And I would say the next challenging part has probably been this week, to be honest. I'm not considering quitting necessarily, but I think it's just been such a hard pivot. I know this sounds really wanky because I've just been on holiday and people aren't going to like me complaining about this is the biggest first world problem ever. But I think it's a very human thing to, just come off a couple of months of enjoying myself, to come back to such an extreme lifestyle that I have now. Like I said, all day, every day, because I'm trying to make this work. It's been hard, but to tell you the truth, I've been back 10 days and I feel better than I did on day 7, on day 4. So we'll get there. We'll have a good second half of the year, and the motivation will be back.
Yeah. Well, that's very funny you bring that up because, just think about our Christmas holiday, right? Like everyone, you get managed to 2-week annual leave. You extend it out. I had the 3 weeks, and me and Anthony go to the gym together all the time, and we were doing morning sessions together. And I look at you our first week back, and I'm like, mate, I don't think I can do full time for another fucking 30, 40 years, however time. Like I work in like product management, so pretty much bringing idea from the idealization stage all the way up to delivering it into Bunnings, actually, without giving away too much. But I'm like, mate, I got to think of a product. I'm thinking about gym products, like it's something that for like us is the ticket out of there. But yeah, like you do feel that burnout where you just enjoyed yourself. I had 2-3 weeks off the Christmas break. You spend it with the family. You get to see your loved ones. And then you go back to essentially kind of like the rat race, and you go, there's more to life than just grinding away at work. And like, my family coming from Fiji heritage, like background, I go over there and they're just such a simplistic life. Like, like they just go to work. Everything's to do with their family, and like they might not have the best paying jobs, but they've got a smile on their face every day. And I love going over there just because of that. And I feel like that sometimes can get lost when you're in a first world country. And I'm not saying I don't love Australia. I absolutely love it with all my heart. Would never want to move, but you sometimes just get, you get stuck seeing all your friends, achieving well, and you want to achieve well, and you kind of lose yourself to just wanting, you just get caught up in the wind of everything, and you kind of lose what's kind of important to yourself sometimes. So I've gone on a little bit of a tangent, but like that's to your point. Like I feel like that's fine coming out from a holiday. Like you feel a little bit down and thinking like, damn, there's more to life than just going to work all day.
Yeah, I think our level of satisfaction with life is always correlated with what we believe is possible, what we believe we should be doing. So you talk about going to a completely different culture that's family oriented, and they've got everything they need because they're not exposed to this rat race lifestyle where we've got to go to the top, right? So it's almost like the more developed and more ambitious and more independent people become in a society, the level of dissatisfaction with their life and probably is correlated with our mental health crisis at the moment. I think you make a really good point there. And just to circle back on how I get through it, I didn't really answer that. I just complained. I think one realization I had this week is, I woke up, didn't really want to make videos, missing your, as lame as that sounds, shitty comments. I'm like, what am I doing this for? I did have this realization of thinking back to, I remember feeling like this at Bunnings, like, shitty customers, Terry, who doesn't exist, been a real jerk today. Like, no matter where you are, you're going to have these bad days. You're going to feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember feeling like that at Bunnings. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. You just pick me up and put me in a different situation. The point being is, if I went back to my old life or a different one, you're still going to have those days. You're still going to think, this is not worth it. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when it hit me and reminded me what I'm doing is a privilege. And I chose these problems, and it's not going to get any easier if I just go and work for somebody else. That's what I just reminded myself of.
Yeah. And I guess we're talking a lot about philosophical ideologies within this conversation without actually saying this is this and this is that. But it truly is a mindset shift when you, like you said, you go back 4 or 5 years where you're working at Bunnings and you're having the same thoughts, lingering thoughts that are pestering you in the back of your mind. Fast forward to 4 or 5 years where you would have thought back then, if you can get to the position where you are today, you won't have those dramas. And fucking guess what, Jesse? You're having the same dilemmas that you tried to run away from 4 or 5 years ago. What's going on?
Yeah. I don't know, man. 30-year-olds, we still have girl troubles. We still have all the same things we young fellas do. Like, it doesn't get much easier. I think, dealing with adversity at 30, like I said, I feel like I don't know, when you're going through a lean trot, like the intensity of the emotions are still there. You consciously and intellectually understand yourself a little bit better, and you might realize that, you might have a better perspective because you're 30, but the emotions are still there. I've probably found that I get over them quicker. That's probably the only thing that's happened. Yeah, there's a really deep answer to the question, but like I think that's something you get a little bit better at. You don't feel more resilient, but I think it just doesn't quite last as long. Yeah,
I guess one of the overarching themes there, or statements, without actually saying it, is the holiday blues. Overcoming that, the ability to be able to overcome that as quickly as possible, is such an acquired skill. And if you have that, you're so much better for it in the long run.
100%. Yeah. And I feel like such a douche talking about my post-holiday blues. It is just kind of a human thing. Hey?
The safe place here. I don't know whether it happens when you go.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just a perspective shift when, for me as well, it's not just the end of a holiday. It's probably the end of my adventures in England and stuff like that. So for me, the only thing between me and returning back to Australia is a grind for the rest of the season. So I think it's just been a case of getting used to that as much as anything, just to clarify that.
And regarding, like I said, for the longest time now, maybe close to a year, maybe a little bit over, you've resided in England. And while facing these challenges, like, do you have someone to lean on? Is there somebody you refer to within the AFL world where you are feeling like the way you are feeling? Is there someone you call and say, "Hey, mate, let's have a chat"? Or are you like, you give me the type of vibe that you're quite you battle your. I guess I'm making a short-sighted judgment, but I get the vibe from you that you like to battle, not your demons, but battle your challenges more so on an individual level, and don't really like to extend that out too much. I could be wrong, but I'm putting it out there, and I want to get your vibe, and I want to see how far off I was.
No, I think you are right. The thing is, I do have some like wonderful friends in the AFL YouTube community who are great for a chat. So I had a 3-hour chat with Druzy yesterday. He's been traveling as well, and we had a good chat about life. So he is genuinely one of my best friends. We've become friends through YouTube, but we're still good mates. Terry's another one. Like, we probably speak once every 6 to 12 months, but when we chat, like I said, I think we're kind of kindred spirits. There's a lot that we share. But you know, on a day-to-day basis, no, it is a lonely lifestyle, to be honest. You know, I think, yeah, I probably don't share those things. Like you said, I probably do deal with these things individually. But you know, I've got a great family and support network, and you know, sisters that I'm really close with, and I call them and we talk for an hour at a time, and they might not be able to relate specifically what I'm saying, but my middle sister runs her own business. So there's enough overlap there to talk about, you know, even content. Like she makes content for that purpose. So I've got enough people around, but I won't lie, it's a fairly isolating lifestyle. And I actually haven't really made any friends in England other than my roommate who I was already friends with. It's all been travel and then back here and hard work. And that's okay. I chose this life, but sometimes there can be some friction.
Yeah. Anything on that, brother? Or has he hit that to a T?
I think he's hit the nail on the head.
Nailed it to a T. So you say that the gap between you coming home to Perth, not Melbourne, because he's a Freo fan. Sorry, a West Coast fan. Originally hails out of Perth, but you say it's the AFL season that is, I guess, the impediment between the two from you leaving England and coming back to Australia. Obviously, I'm assuming that there was always an intention to come back, but I guess what if you have a plan? Like, what is the plan of attack once you are done in England and return back to Perth from like a content standpoint? And I guess if you want to extend out a little bit more, then you're more than welcome to go.
It's a good question, and it's a good time for this question, really, because part of my 3-hour conversation with Drew was about this topic, and the day before that, I called my dad about this topic, and I'm still trying to work out exactly what that is. And I never really had a direct plan when I moved over to England. Like, I really just threw caution to the wind and just did whatever I wanted. I think, yeah, throughout the rest of the season, I'm going to commit to being here. If I can travel a little bit, I probably will just go to like Scotland or something like that, if possible. But I really want to see out the rest of the year, have a really strong finish to the season on both channels. And then I'm probably going to hit up Perth for a little while. My sister's about to have a baby, and haven't seen my family for a while. So I think I'm just going to deep dive some family time and be Uncle Jesse for a bit. The plan after that is a little bit murkier. I still have to make some decisions, but I'm considering Melbourne. It's probably only between Perth and Melbourne that I'm realistically considering. It would be nice to be in a space where there's so many like-minded people, and there's almost like an industry now. Like you see what's going over there, like Marmalade and Caden and what those guys, that network that they've got there. It'd be nice to at least go over there and maybe not necessarily immerse myself and get myself in all of their videos, but at least be around like-minded people, such as yourself, such as Terry, such as Swoop Luke, like all these people I know, they're all in Melbourne, and Druzy, like maybe that's the place for me to be next. They've got to figure that out first.
How exciting. You're more than welcome to come watch some West Coast games in our household, but
nice.
We don't buy. We're diehard Pie supporters, but we're not the ones you get I wouldn't say in the cheer squad because that'd be doing a disservice to the club, but we're not those nuppies that you see at the stadium. So
pretty level-headed.
Yeah,
I reckon we're pretty level-headed.
We're all right.
But that kind of
I don't mind Pies fans. I think they get a bad rap. I think Collingwood's like fine. You know what I mean? I'd just remove from Melbourne.
We got all that teeth.
That's true.
Truthfully, I'm on the side that, and I'll probably get some flack for this, so I'm ready for it. But I just feel like there's, and I use the term broadly because you can't narrow down the characteristics of a footy supporter. I feel like there's a lot of nuffies in the AFL arena, that is the MCG or the Marvel Stadium or the Optus Stadium. Just some of the things you hear, and I don't know. Look, it could be me just being naive. Maybe this is omnipresent in every sports world, whether it be EPL or NBA. Maybe you hear the same things, but I just feel like when I go to a game, it doesn't matter what like crowd it is, I just feel there's so many obscene things being said by supporters, whether it's like a reaction to a call that was a bad call in their eyes, or they say something or something offensive. I just find it interesting the makeup of the AFL world, and that's just me.
It's like you can go to any game and there will still be a nuffie, whether he'll be a Collingwood supporter, a Freo, West Coast supporter, a Port Adelaide, and they just got the generic NBC responses.
And he's just behind you.
Yeah.
He just happens to be sitting right behind you for the whole entire game.
100%. I mean, I don't get to a lot of footy in Melbourne, but it's interesting going to games in WA. So I've been to Eagles games. I went to the derby where Gaff hit Brayshaw. And I actually went with a Freo supporting friend, and I heard people in the back like criticizing Brayshaw for having a soft jaw. Like, it's just horrific. It just made me facepalm. And I just think footy fans, it's just a cross section of society, and that there might be like deviations and socioeconomic like divisions between clubs, but I generally think just most people like footy, and a lot of people are shitty, and a lot of people are great. You know what I mean? It's just, we're all kind of the same thing, same people wearing different colors. You know, Freo fans, and I'm not going to say that West Coast fans are good. I think what happens is West Coast games and Freo games, everyone goes for the same team. So it just becomes a big echo chamber. So everyone starts booing the umpires. Everyone starts, you know, screaming and defending their club. And Freo fans like to think that West Coast fans are better. We get criticised for booing. We get criticised for leaving games early, which is cliche. And then I've been to that many Fremantle games where both of those things have happened. So I just kind of think we're all more or less the same people wearing different colours.
There you go. There you go.
It's beautiful,
just quickly,
isn't it?
Yeah, that was very nice. Very nice. I'm looking forward to the backlash on my comment in the comment section. Maybe this is my
Demise.
My demise arc, that some will say.
I guess one of the things you mentioned is, you know, the potential move to Melbourne. I guess one of the things that I thought was, you know, you're in WA, you're now currently in the United Kingdom. Like, do you find like there is, I guess, like for an AFL content creator, is it hard that you're away from all of it? Like you mentioned the Marmalade Boys and how they've, you know, rehomed essentially to Melbourne from Adelaide, who's a great like footy state.
Yeah.
Like, is there part of you where it's like you feel like you need to come to Melbourne just to be more immersed with how crazy footy is here?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I really feel like a pull or an excitement to go to Melbourne. I'm actually kind of thinking more like in 5-10 years, will I regret not doing it? I think it'll just be an experience. You know, I shifted around obviously to England, and probably don't really have the same social circle that I used to when I lived in Perth. And, you know, most of my friends are getting married and having kids, like, you know, father time gets us all. But, you know, where I go next, I'm concerned with my social circle and networking with people who are like-minded. Like, I've got to consider that. And I actually think Melbourne might be easier for that reason. And couple that with the fact that being from Perth, I don't think I fully understand what Melbourne footy culture is like. Like, I've been there for grand finals and I've been there for the occasional game, but I don't really think that's the
final
same
was
thing.
that, Jesse, just quickly?
2018, you might have heard of it.
Go on, as you were.
Oh.
Yeah. I went to 15 as well. I drove over that one. That one was a little bit more heartbreaking. But yeah, I don't think I fully understand what the culture is there. There is a footy culture in WA, but it's 2 teams, and I'm keen to experience that, even if it's just for a year or two. You know, treat it like the same thing as this UK adventure. My Melbourne adventure might be next. Just experience what it's like, and then I don't even know if it will improve my channel or my career. Like, I'm not even thinking about it in those terms. I think it's more the experience aspect that draws me to Melbourne.
Brilliant, Jesse. That's a good answer, but I'm going to quickly turn off the heater because I feel like it's fucking 4 a.m. and we're stuck on the couch at Revs. If you know what Revs is, you know. Give me 1 second. I'm going to turn off this heater. Give me a sec, man.
That's all good. Yeah.
I've got a funny story about 2018 final. So I used to work part-time when I was at uni at the MCG, and I used to work in the MCC section, which is quite like a fancy, like 20-year wait time to get on board. And I was a bartender there. And I remember in the first quarter, we were up by like 30 points, and I'm going around to West Coast fans just giving them shit. Like, you know, like, not full AFL Nuffy stats, but I'm going like, you know, like, how's the game? Like, enjoy. How was the trip over here? All this for no reason. And I shit you not, every supporter I said that to, they let me know about it when the game finished. I've got hay fever. I'm pretty sure there was no pollen in the air, but I was getting hay fever. My eyes were watering. I don't know what happened at the end of the game, but they were going the manager put me on a little 5-minute break so I could go to the toilet and sort myself out because I was that sad that we lost. And then also all these West Coast supporters are giving me shit, rightfully so, because I was giving them shit when we were up, and that's why you don't get too cocky before the game's over, especially if you're a Collingwood fan.
Especially
That's a great story. I love that.
Yeah. Jesse, what do I have for you? So I guess with your consideration in moving to Melbourne, potentially to link up in networking and content creation, we've seen the recent inception of True Eagle. And obviously, I'd love for you to talk a bit about the decision in that pivot. And then maybe also from there, if we don't forget, I can remind you, maybe talk about what are some other changes you are considering or have you been considering or where you're at with that? Talking about maybe, this is a long-winded question, so we might have to come back to it, but live streams obviously is something that's becoming quite prevalent within the sports fan world. Look at the EPL, Arsenal TV, Blue Board's doing what he's doing. So have at that what you will.
Okay. Was the first question was about True Eagle, wasn't it?
Yes.
So starting there,
this is the low-key test. Yeah, I'm testing his IQ and his memory.
He really was a lawyer.
Yeah, the memory retention.
So I started True Eagle around the pre-season. I want to say like around the intra-club period. That's where I started the channel, if I'm not mistaken. Reason I did it. So last year I actually started making Eagles specific videos on True Footy once a week. It just kind of happened that there were so many horrific losses that it almost felt like they were probably kind of True Footy stories anyway, like conceding 200 points in the game. Like that probably is a True Footy story. So yeah, I kind of lent into that. The videos were popular probably because of how horrific West Coast were and people were intrigued in my opinion there. But, you know, as time went on, it just kind of felt a little bit out of place to just like shovel like a Eagles, I think called it Eagles Corner video onto that channel. So I sort of been considering making a second channel. The pros and cons were, well, the cons are no established audience. So, you know, the views would be low. It's also demonetized for what would become 6 weeks. So I worked for 6 weeks for free, basically. But one day, to be honest, like it's so silly. One day I just sort of was messing around on one of my backup channels. That sounds so sus. It's like a burner account. No, I used to have a different YouTube channel. I used to have a different YouTube channel where I made like content non-football related that I got sick of. So changed that. I basically just made the logo, made the banner. And then I was like, how easy is it to change my name from Jesse Thomas to True Eagle? And once I'd done that, I was like, screw it. The new channel started. So then I just promoted it. And, yeah. What was that? Sorry?
You can't trust a man with 2 first names. Jesse Thomas.
Exactly. So yeah, that was kind of how it started. I also, you know, I'm constantly looking for ways to evolve and keep this game fresh. You know, it's pretty formulaic what I do and have been doing for years. And talking about the Eagles energizes me to some extent. You know, even if it's not going well, it's content that I'm passionate about. So that was kind of one of the biggest motivators for me. And, you know, there was an ambitious part of me that was like, you know, what if somebody comes along and starts an Eagles channel and it thrives and it becomes like this pumping West, like there's a lot of Eagles fans. If somebody had beaten me to that, I think there would always be a part of me that goes, I wish it was me. So there was part of that as well. And yeah, now I run the two alongside each other. And I'm not going to lie, it came with its own new challenges. Like it's nice to talk about West Coast, but if you thought, and you can probably relate to this, but if you thought that, you know, starting an Eagles channel, I was like, cool, not many people are going to disagree with me. They're not going to vehemently like challenge my opinions that much because we all want the same thing. But then I quickly found not only do you have opposition trolls, but you have Eagles fans who just think, or, you know, they just think I'm too easy on the club, for instance. And if anything, the vitriolic responses were worse on the Eagles channel, which is fine, but just something I didn't expect. But for the most part, it is nice, a little bit refreshing to make content for a slightly different community that is all invested in the same team and want the same things for the most part. The people still disagree, but that's probably the thing that keeps it fresh for me. And it's nice to have that little community on the side. And I have forgotten the second half of your question, Anthony. Sorry.
There we go. We got him. All right, It's all good. So the second question, now I'm testing my memory. Caleb and I always joke about this early onset dementia that we've been suffering from since probably 2019, 2018. We're starting to think it's a real thing, but leave that at that. The question was, Jesse, regarding like your endeavor to potentially moving to Melbourne for content creation, but then also questioning whether you have considerations as far as what you might look at doing differently if you have thought about that. And I also mentioned part of that being maybe like, what are your thoughts on like the live stream world being, if you look at Arsenal Fan TV, they do that pretty well. Like I said, Terry's done that to a T brilliantly in a Carlton realm, doing live shows. Is that something I've seen you obviously do live shows before, but obviously with the time differences, that has its challenges as well. But is there anything there that you're looking to tap into?
That's a good question. I see it as a necessary part of the game. I'm not sure if I see it as the future or anything. Like if you look at what, I don't know if you subscribe to the Footy with Broden Kelly, I think that's what it's called, or the Footy with Broden. Yeah. Broden Kelly from Auntie Donna. He started his own show with Marnie Vinyl. And I want to say it's Ben. I think it's Ben. Anyway, they do like a live format, and what they do is they start the live stream and then they have a bit of 10 minutes of riffing, and then they start the podcast. They film the podcast in the live stream, then they distribute that on their audio channels, and then once the stream's done, they then clip up the stream so you can watch the stream in its entirety, and then they reproduce clips and stuff like that. And it's high quality, high production as well. So they make several pieces of content just from one thing. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. You know, I think he's just started watching games and live streaming. I think that's got its place. Mine don't perform well because I don't have the resources to make it good. You know what I mean? For whatever, like it's tech that I just haven't invested in. But I do think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think even Fancast AFL, I think maybe they're just called Fancast or Fancast AFL, another great channel, high quality produced live show. And I think there's something to that, absolutely. But again, that's probably more of a tech thing. And it's, like I said, I think it's one area of YouTube that is necessary to do, but not one that I really focused on. And that should change over time. I probably just need some help like producing it, to be honest. Yeah, no, it can be a bit of a, it's just when you're walking into a new world, there's a lot of questions that are unknown. Sometimes they are simple, but it's just like sometimes a matter of walking into it. But very interesting. I'd like to see the football come down as some sort of rendition into, or something that turns into a show. That'd be interesting at some point. But that's interesting. What else do I have? Brother, you got anything on that one?
Nah, nothing really to
add. Cheers, Jeff.
Yeah, cheers, yeah. No, like what I like out of the podcast, and not the podcast, I should say the live streams, is you get to talk to the comments and the people there, and you kind of get to know them. Like, you know, we have regulars on the show now, and like yesterday we were doing the pie performance where we rate every player, and Benny Parsons wasn't on. Did you notice that, Chip?
He messaged me on Instagram. He said, "Sorry, man, I'm not going to make the stream today."
Yeah, and I was like, oh, even I noticed he wasn't on there. And you build a community, and I really actually like that. And it's actually I'm surprised, like sometimes, like not attached, but like I feel like you miss them a little bit when they're not on the stream, and you're building this nice little community where you're all focused around footy and talking about Collingwood. And I feel like that's a good recipe for, you know, growing your channel and getting these guys' opinions heard. And that's why I feel like when we did do the live stream watch along, a lot of people did like it because they could come on and vent, and we have a platform to talk about it and give them feedback as well of like, you know, like why isn't this happening this, and we can directly talk to that. So that's the aspect of the live streams that I'm really liking so far.
Yeah, I agree. It's an opportunity to show personality in a different way as well, which I think helps build the community. And you make a good point. Like I'm inconsistent with my live streaming. I'm going to get back into it soon, and probably this weekend actually. But it is cool to see like the same faces, or same names pop up, and then that becomes like its own little community. Like there's people in my live streams who are there every time that don't necessarily comment on videos. And I was like, I didn't even know you guys existed. But then you have fun on the stream in a very different way. And mine don't perform well, but I do enjoy them. I did heaps of them over the summer. So it'd be great. It's a great way to harness community, which is something I have focused on this year. Like the Football Come Down is a community-based show. I want people to contribute. I respond to them. I think that's key, and it actually just keeps it funner as well. You feel a bit more connected to the audience.
Yeah. And it was interesting. You mentioned before the whole Bert and Kelly doing the recycling content, which a lot of like different types of YouTube channels are doing. That's obviously another thing that, again, we are talking to a niche at certain times throughout this video who are, I guess, aspiring to become someone like a Jesse Thomas. Maybe not a Jesse Thomas, maybe like a Jesse Sanders or something. No two first names. But yeah, it's one of those, I guess, other pieces of ways to produce content at a high frequency and a high level is by recycling some of that podcast you did. We might have a really good 10-minute snippet from this video where we could potentially recycle, which we haven't done before, but maybe that's something worth considering. But just like for me on a personal level, Jesse, with Caleb, I think the streams have been unreal. I think we're always, and it's really a sales sort of strategy as well, in the sense that people are always focused on prospective clients that we forget about the existing base. And I feel like just generally speaking as a world, we undermine the importance of, I guess, building a stronger sense of relationship with that existing community that's already there. So that's one thing I'm really liking, and I'm looking forward to what that means for the channel from a recipient level, being the recipients of like the experience we get out of being on YouTube, and also the people on the other end who are watching. Where does that? It's just exciting. I don't know how to quite articulate it, but I'm looking forward to whatever that has in the near future, because I think, as you mentioned before, Jesse, it can be quite an isolating job or endeavor or passion or side hustle. Having that live stream aspect to it can take you out of that hole where you're like this, fucking looking at two monitors, a camera, for like, in your case, up to 15 hours a day on a daily basis. I think it's a good break, and it's soothing for the soul. So that's what I take out of it. So it's more than one thing for me personally.
Yeah, and I felt like if you went to law school, you would have articulated that a little bit better.
There you go.
But it wasn't too bad. Get a B minus for.
No, I think you made a great point. You don't want to overlook the existing base. Is a great point. I think it's two things. You want, from a business point of view, it's good to build loyalty. Like if you're thinking of it like a client, that brand loyalty is valuable to you. So doing things like live streams might not have the same immediate ROI because, well, at least mine don't perform that well, but there is probably a long-term ROI in terms of loyalty. But that's just the business side of it. And then, like you said, I do find it more fulfilling to have a connection with the audience. And sometimes I dip in and out because I find it difficult, especially when I'm working so hard. And when things aren't going well in my life, I find it really hard to immerse. Like my Instagram is dead. I don't touch it much. I've had a month here or there where I'd get into it. But social media for me is just something that I dip out of when I'm not feeling like my social battery is low. So that's challenging with like responding to comments and live streams as well. That's why I'm inconsistent with it. But I do find that I do enjoy it, and it's refreshing to have that relationship with the audience. And it's a tough one. Like the bigger you get, the less likely you are to be able to remember names. But at the moment, like my audience is modest enough in size that I can remember people, and I have a feel of their personalities, and they're great to do live streams with and stuff. So there's multiple benefits, like you said.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I think like as your Eagles channel grows, you'll see that more. It's probably a little bit harder when you're more like a generalist, when you're talking about the AFL on True Footy, whereas we've got quite a niche where people, they know what they're expecting and what we're going to be talking about, and that's what you're bonding over. I think that would be a little bit harder on a True Footy in a general aspect, but especially something to look at on your Eagles channel.
That'd be huge. I can come in and I can be on one of my anonymous accounts and troll you and relish in that opportunity.
You wouldn't be the first, mate.
I'll be Tom John. So if you see a Tom John, first two names, maybe you'll pick it out.
That's the red flag I'll keep an eye out for.
Jesse, one last question, mate. We've kept you for over an hour, so appreciate the time you put away. We know you got some content to create for the greater community, but put your again. We got some flack. I got some flack in the live stream the other day. I need to work on my analogies. So
Your analogies, fuck.
my analogies are horrible. I thought that one I mentioned, by the way, about you leaving me the shit colored lollies being so just for context, guys. For the Pie Performers video, Jesse, I got Caleb assigned me a bunch of players to keep an eye on, and he assigned himself a bunch of players. He assigned himself both the Dacos brothers, right? And I said in the Pie Performance stream, I go, bro, you've kind of left me the green and yellow lollies in the party mix, and you've got all the fucking purple and reds. And then somebody said that wasn't a good analogy. Jesse?
No, I like it. But the thing is, everyone disagrees about what the good flavors are. See, I'm an orange man, but I get teased for that.
One. The raspberry drops, those red ones, they're the best one in the party mix. But anyway.
So before I digress, because like I said, my memory is not my strong suit. Put your hand over the globe that the gypsy or the genie puts over, and tell us, where do you see the AFL YouTube landscape in? I said I had it listed as 12 to 24 months, but let's go 24 months more specifically.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think we're seeing a divergence now. What was originally the AFL YouTube scene, it was still broadly considered that, but now there's a divergence between fan channels. There's like general analysts, and then there's like personalities, and so this what do you call it? The landscape has changed. So like on the one hand, you've got Caden McDonald, you've got Marmalade, you've got even Prime Train probably in that category. He's more like a game day vlogger. Is that different? That probably is its own thing, right? And you got some fan channels, and then you've got like individual whatevers like me, and Daz Talks Footy is a really good one as well. Too many to name, but like you're seeing this divergence, and it seems like the fastest growth opportunities seem to be in the personalities. So someone like a Caden and Marmalade and all those guys. That seems like the place you can really blow up, like on Instagram. It's a bit more general and funny and stuff like that. By the same token, like I think fan channels are a big opportunity as well. And I think people are still getting into this mindset of realizing that fan channels are a thing and really appreciating what they are. And I think I think it's fair to look at the UK and the US for a template of what this will become. And I think, while the market is smaller in Australia, I think you can expect it might not get there as quickly, but you might be able to get people just making full-time livings talking about the team from a fan perspective. I don't think that's necessarily going to be in 2 years. But that being said, I think Terry's full-time, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Saints TV as well. I'm not too sure. I actually don't know Jake too well personally, but I feel like I've heard him say that before. So we're getting there, whether it's 2 years, I'm not too sure, but when we may or may not even be in the point now where there's a fan channel for every team. I don't know if that is the case. I've seen a Gold Coast one recently that does exist. I've seen a Brisbane Lions one. And those are probably the two that come to mind. GWS is the other. But is there I feel like I might have seen a Crows one. Anyway, the point is, like, maybe we just close that gap a little bit. Every team gets represented. Is it going to be professional in 2 years for more than a couple of people? Maybe not. But we'll see. The creator economy in general is growing. The amount of money you can make on YouTube is higher than it used to be. And that's something I track as well. Yeah. The more advertising spending that goes into the platform, the more money there is to be made from AdSense. Which in a way is actually kind of good and bad. It actually means that this game is not recession proof. You know what I mean? So like if the economy takes a downturn and advertising spending drops and consumer spending power drops, it really does affect us from an AdSense point of view because we're essentially in the ads game, right? But it's a really long-winded way of answering your question. I think we can make serious progress, and I think the end result is probably something closer to what you see in the UK with the Premier League.
Yeah. And it's crazy, Jesse, as you pointed out to how in 2024, we're a world where any, I guess, industry or category is typically saturated by people already, whether it be the personal development, personal training, social media influence, or whatever it may be. But somehow AFL does not have a YouTube channel for every single club yet. Like that just bemuses me. I find that really interesting, considering I just feel like there's not a lot of, this could be me being naive and stubborn, but I feel like there's not a lot of pathways where you can go into these days that hasn't already been trekked down before by someone, right?
Yeah, really good point. Really good point. It's actually kind of baffling that I mean, like I said, there may be a channel for every team, but certainly not one for every team that is serious about being not even full-time, but serious about being consistent and really growing their audience. I don't know if they do exist. I haven't found them yet, but that's kind of the point, right? Like it just hasn't become commonplace, like you said, which is unusual in 2024.
Yeah, and just the further growth of fan channels, personalities such as the Marmalade Boys, and I know on Instagram, just all the enhanced, we got enhanced football, teaching kids how to kick. It's all good for the game. Like, I wish there was, like, I didn't have Instagram growing up until I was like 19, 20, because I was just against it. But like, there's so many good outlets over there for kids willing to learn to further enhance their footy. And then like maybe we can appeal to a crowd where, look, like I'm not going to make it in footy, but I can be a personality, I can be a prime trader, I can be a Marmalade Boys, or there's a fan community base where I can be a part of as well.
Very good point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I think of my relationship with Premier League content. So I'm a Liverpool fan, but I'm like kind of chill about it. Like I can see you grimace. Who do you got?
Man City.
Oh, gross.
Here we go.
But my relationship with it is like pretty casual. But then like because I like True Geordie, I'll like tune into the kickoff and watch that occasionally and see what his opinions are. So I think actually watching him and boxing, like I'm interested in boxing because he'll do like a breakdown of a fight that I have no idea who the people are, but I'm kind of getting into it now. And the same could apply for YouTube and AFL broadly. Like there's an opportunity to build someone's connection with the game if they like your personality. I don't know if I'm that for people, but I'm sure there are some people who are that for people, and therefore, maybe like content creators are worth some investment and support. I think that has happened over the last few years. There's a bit more of a outreach from the AFL and stuff like that. I don't think we should be completely reliant on the AFL to try and get us a leg up, but any little bit helps, right?
Yeah. I think, Jesse, for me personally, before I guess, or especially with like Caleb and I took this, I guess, track down into the AFL content world, specifically Collingwood content, I didn't really consume a whole lot of YouTube AFL content, but the YouTube algorithm does what it does, right? And I stumbled across couple of True Footy videos, and I see something in you. I'm not trying to glaze you, stuff, but I got to speak the truth. But I just found that the way you expounded upon the topic of certain conversations within AFL had me engaged so much to the point that I started to like your personality and the way you explained things and articulated yourself more than the content itself, which is, I guess, just adding to your point that people might latch on to the AFL world by way of, I guess, feeling that connection or liking the way someone goes about a certain thing. So I just wanted to add that to your point to further strengthen that, I guess.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate the compliment. That's very kind. I think that is important is to build that relationship through personality. And I've sometimes, like, I've always known that that's the way to grow. It's to get your personality out there and not be robotic. And I still cycle sometimes where I've probably been too silly on the channel. We're probably a few years removed from that now. That's probably more like 2021. And then now I am feeling like I'm a little bit robotic. So I don't know, it'd be nice to find a fresh new format where I can be myself a little bit, be, a little bit silly within reason. And it's hard to do that without losing what to some extent has made me successful, which was analyzing the game. But that's only works if I'm doing it well. So yeah, I think I and many others have a need to think about exactly the way I position myself in this game. But for now, I'll take the compliment.
Brilliant. Anything to that, James?
No, I think that sums it up pretty well.
Shama.
No, I reckon like just one. Actually, I've got to lie to you. One thing is about YouTube, and if we can get eyes where I'd love to see the game expand. And like for me, I would love to see like a New Zealand team, kind of similar to like a format potentially like the Super Rugby, where you have a New Zealand team in the competition. And I think that like for us, as much as I love this game, I want to see it grow. And the fact that I was alluding to before is, you're going to have content creators, you're going to have these kids developing at a crazy rate. We're going to get new Nick Dacos out there because there's so much content.
Harley Reid's, hold on.
Harley Reid's out there because the pathway of how to make it is so much more clearer than I was trying to come through.
Yeah.
Like, I was under the impression, like, if I just play good in my under 17s game, like I'll be right? Like, there's now, obviously you're a little bit older, but there's content creators out there teaching you how to kick the ball properly, where your local footy coach might not know, and you might be stuck in the way of the 60s. I've had a few of those. And then you've got guys like us, talking about fan cams and how do you talk about, analysis and what they should be doing. And then you've got the other of the spectrum where you got these entertainment where people might not like playing footy, but they see like a Marmalade Boys, they see a Prime
We're
Train.
funny sometimes.
We're a little bit funny, but like you see these personalities and like it might attract them to the game. So I'm very positive with how this scope is looking, and I just want the love of the game to keep expanding.
Yeah, there you go.
I agree. I mean, selfishly, as an Eagles fan, I'm good with no more Perth teams. I'm good with the 18 teams we have. I really only care about my team. So we'll see. It's probably inevitable though. A New Zealand team would be cool, actually, to be fair. Their equivalent of an All Blacks team in the AFL would be nuts.
Look, I'm just saying we're all screwed once America catches up with the natural athletic ability some of those people, those ladies and gentlemen have. We're gonna be screwed. But Jesse, mate, we've just ticked over an hour and 20. I don't want to take up any more of your time because I promise you we could probably ramble on with you for another 6 hours.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to finish on before we call the Pies Eyes podcast episode 7?
No, thanks for having me on, boys. This is a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this chat. It's always nice to talk shop. And honestly, it's great to be on the show. You guys are doing an amazing job, and I feel like the future is very bright. So thank you very much for having me.
No worries. And lastly, link will be in the description for both these channels. True Footy and True Eagle, right?
That's right.
Pretty simple. There you go.
I'd be surprised if you get some True Eagle subscribers, but True Footy might go up a little bit.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, boys.